Welcome to Have an Opinion, Nick and Kyle. Back, season number 4. It's more like of a 2-3 episode series that we're doing while Kyle's visiting me here in Pittsburgh. But it is the return, and you can sleep well tonight knowing that you got a full episode of Have an Opinion in. Or maybe you're breaking it up into a couple of segments. I don't care how you listen, as long as you're listening. We have a review of the Super Bowl, the halftime show, the game itself, and a review of a movie for you coming up right after the intro. That's what's on the menu. Stick around for the full course. I don't know if I like that. And it is Nick and Kyle back at it once again in kind of a room dedicated to being the studio. As you can see, we have palm trees.
That's right.
That's cool. It's backdrop. It is a backdrop. But because it is Have an Opinion, I did bring something down with me for the move. Don't mind me. We do. We do still have
the board.
The OG Have an Opinion sign. I'll prop it up behind my water bottle if there's enough in it to hold it up. Oh, yeah. You put yours on one side. Oh, look at that. Now we just can't drink during this.
I say mine's not even touching. It's all you.
There we go. Maybe that'll make you feel a little more welcome, a little more like things have not changed, a little more homey.
Makes me feel homey.
I'm glad. My home is your home. Anyone's home who I invite here, it's your home. Just don't eat my food without asking.
Hey, that's fair enough.
Kyle's a very good guest. He has not done that. Anyway,
I try.
Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for sticking with us. If you're a returning listener, welcome. If you're a new listener, I just burped. Professional podcasting, as always.
I like to think there's somebody who's like just waiting for this new episode. One person out there's like, yes.
I like to think so too.
Maybe not, but
I like to think someone will see this and be like, oh wait, they're back? Like, that's cool.
Kyle didn't die in a fiery wreck.
Kyle's okay. Like, that's awesome. Because you have no other internet footprint other than this show.
No one knows I exist.
And your Facebook that has our friend as your profile picture from like his 8th birthday party. So
and my birthday's wrong on there too, because every year somebody texts me at that date and they're like, happy birthday. I'm like, nope. I
think I saved your actual birthday in my phone. I usually don't do that, but I think I saved your real one just because you get the text. I got played before. But yeah, thank you very much for tuning in. Obviously, probably will never be back to the weekly format, at least the way things are now, considering we live 2 hours away from each other. And frankly, we're not millionaires from this, so that's just not really going to happen yet.
No, sadly.
But you know what? It's great to be back. Great to be doing some podcasting for all of you, our dedicated listeners. And I say that unironically because if you look at our numbers from last season 3, they were consistent, a little bit of growth even towards the end as it ended. So naturally, all of that growth probably got washed away like some debris on a beach. But you know what? Here we are. We appreciate anyone who tunes in. And just thankful to anyone who checks us out, spreads the word. I know a lot of you are friends. So thanks for sticking around. And if we can work it out, we'd love to have our friends on. It's always good to share opinions with others.
Absolutely.
We'll start with the Super Bowl. Yeah. The game itself. What did you think, Kyle?
So I enjoyed it. I had said in our group chat beforehand that it was weird seeing a Super Bowl where like I was happy with whoever won. I found myself rooting for the Bengals during the game. I think just because I leaned towards the underdog and it was like obvious that they were. And it kind of stunk because I really thought they was going to go to overtime. That sack by Aaron Donald, great by him because it's cool seeing a defensive player show up in the biggest play of the game. Did
you see like Sean McVay on the sideline saying Aaron Donald's going to make a play right here?
No,
he was literally on the sideline saying Aaron Donald's going to make a play. Aaron Donald's going to make a play, and like then he gets the sack.
It's great that like he was able to do that because it seems like I like Washington, and so Chase Young's like that guy for our team, and it's always like gosh they double him every play. He's great, but if you're doubled, he's never getting to the quarterback, and so it's cool to see like the guy who's supposed to do it. You know? And great for Stafford. Super happy.
Oh, I was too. That's why I rooted for the Rams. I love Joe Burrow. I'm a Steelers fan, so I had a lot of issues saying flat out I want the Bengals to win. I wanted Joe Burrow to have a good game. If the Bengals won, then so be it. As a Steelers fan, I couldn't really bring myself to saying, "Yay, go Bengals! Hooray!"
Yeah, and I hated Burrow in college. I'm an Ohio State guy, and he was supposed to be at Ohio State. Haskins got the job over him, which granted he was good in college, but then it's funny because Burrow went on to have like the best 1 year, stat line of anybody. But now that he's in the NFL, I love him. He's fun to watch. Jamar Chase is great. Really, they're all great, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no,
the dynamic is great.
Especially the dynamic of Chase and Burrow from being in college together and stuff. Like,
I wish there was more of that. Well, Washington had it with Haskins and Terry McLaurin, but it just didn't. Haskins didn't work out.
Yeah, now he's Pittsburgh's problem or savior. Maybe.
He's got to be better than Rudolph. Not to totally get sidetracked off the bat. He has to be, right? You would know. I don't follow them as much.
I don't know if I trust either of them.
I don't. But I'm not a fan of
I question both, I don't want to say maturity, but seriousness, I guess.
Right.
I don't know. I don't want to get into that right now. But I thought the game was good. You know, I thought the commercials were really lackluster.
Yeah, they're really... I'm trying to think of any that stood out. I liked the Big Lebowski bowling one with Peyton Manning, and it was like, you could tell there was going to be multiple commercials, but then like the subsequent commercials weren't funny, and they never went. It was like, I think there were only two that I remember, and one of them was just all Brooks Koepka, which was funny, but like I was waiting for the third one with like the bowling or a joke, or maybe Jeff Bridges would come in, another Big Lebowski character, like they had Steve Buscemi, and now there's just nothing.
I liked the, I don't even know their names. I'm the worst. It was a Schitt's Creek reference. You ever watch Schitt's Creek?
No, but I know who's in it.
It's the dad from American Pie's the main character.
Yeah, and he's like the action star.
Yeah.
That one was funny. I forget his name.
His wife in that show, Moira.
Yeah, the mom
he pulls up next to her, the mom from Home Alone, yeah. Yep.
That's how I know
which
her.
It just baffles me every time I see her.
Yeah.
She was the mom in Home Alone. Not even like we were alive when that came out, but it makes me feel old.
Yeah, because that's all
she's like
you
a
know
normal age mom in that movie. Now she's like old.
Yeah, like a grandma.
And you're like, what? It's just really weird. But no, I thought the game was good. As you said, it was really cool not to really care who won. And as I mentioned earlier, I preferred the Rams to win. But the Bengals are exciting enough to where I would have been like, ooh, that stings as a Steelers fan. But also, they've got a pretty good amount of likable guys on that team.
Right. It would have been
Tyler
easy
Boyd, who's from the Pittsburgh area. So hearing about him this week was cool, or that week, I should say, was cool.
A lot of good storylines, too. Mixon, it seems like he's never really taken that next step. This year would have been a great one.
Especially, the dude got dunked on every year, and this year he finally, I think fantasy-wise, which unfortunately is how we measure people up to if they're living up to their potential.
Yeah, he finally broke out a little bit better.
And like Jamar Chase, I had him in fantasy.
Oh, that's right, you did have him.
I traded T. Higgins for Jamar Chase. There were a couple other pieces, I believe. I think this is how it happened. And people were like, what are you doing? Because literally that week was the week everyone was saying he can't catch the ball because there weren't white stripes on it like in college. And there's all that stuff that he literally forgot how to catch the ball. I don't know if you heard that, but the cat just knocked something over.
I just want to make sure everything's okay.
Yeah. And so we might check on him a few times. But, to see him actually have a record-setting rookie year was so cool. Joe Burrow obviously has kind of embraced this cool, calm, collected kind of persona, and
which fits him really well.
It does. He's not like arrogant about it. I just think he kind of knows like how he comes off, and so he's kind of embraced that character, the way people have built him up. And I think
I like the cigar too. That's a cool.
Cigars
are
classy.
Yeah.
I hate cigarettes. I've made that very well known. But a cigar every now and then.
Something about cigars.
The right mannerisms while you're smoking it, like. That's pretty badass.
Yeah, it fits him
comes
well.
Off well. And I hate that they're already saying he's going to be the next Dan Marino. He gets to a Super Bowl early in his career and never gets close again.
Oh, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. I saw a thing today that like the past 12 quarterback, I think it was 12, past 12 who have lost. Past 12 who have lost a Super Bowl have yet to make it back to one.
In their debut, right?
Maybe, yeah, because except for Mahomes, right?
Well, Mahomes won his debut.
Right. Oh, that's right. That's right. So if they lost their debut
that
or they
game's
lost
a fever dream.
Yeah.
49ers Chiefs in 2020. I could not tell you a detail about that game other than I bet the alternative over in the third quarter and it hit and I won money on it. I cannot tell you a play from that game because it feels like it was eons ago.
Yeah, I don't remember really caring because I didn't really care who won either one. See, at the time I still liked the Chiefs, and then very quickly, I don't like the Chiefs anymore. They're just so good all the time. It's weird how that works.
It's one of those things where it happened to me with the Golden State Warriors. I think I said this on another podcast, but these teams that maybe compete, because, when they had Alex Smith and some of those guys, they made it to the playoffs. And I know the Steelers one year beat them in the divisional round, I think it was.
Right, and they
were there, but they weren't perennial champs or whatever.
Right. They never got past Steelers, Patriots, whoever was in the way.
And so, like with Golden State, LeBron came back, whatever, and it was all LeBron's finally going to bring to Cleveland, and the Warriors beat them.
Yeah.
And it was like, holy crap, that's so cool. You got this Steph Curry guy and Klay Thompson and all these guys that were kind of emerging as stars in the league. But, I mean, they ruined LeBron's,
Cinderella.
bringing a ring to Cleveland.
Right.
At least for like a year or two. But he had never got it, obviously, in one of the greatest series of all time.
Gosh. And that was the year, because then right after that, didn't they go like the 73 or whatever it was? And then they lost in the finals, which was just nuts.
But, like, I remember being so drawn to Golden State because it felt like they shouldn't have been there. Almost in a way. It felt like they wouldn't beat LeBron and the Cavs at least.
Right.
And
yeah, because at that time it wasn't like LeBron and scrubs. It was like a big Cavs team.
It became just hard to support the Warriors.
I've never
that next year they won those 73 games, and you get these like young teenage fans on social media that just run their mouths, and they don't have their real names. They have pictures of like the star player from their team, and they're like, "Oh, your franchise is poverty. Like, you're trash. They're not good. Think of the past," and they just run their mouths and don't.
Yeah,
and again, there's trash talk in sports, but it's these people that I don't think respect the game or appreciate anybody other than their own. Yeah, bandwagon essentially. Right. I was trying to make it a clearer picture, but yes, it is just a bandwagon.
Right.
And that's how the Chiefs kind of became to me. Just every time they do something, it's just all of these fans in the comments that probably weren't fans 5 years ago running their mouths, and it's just, shut up. Appreciate the game, appreciate the talent on each team. And
what I don't like about the Chiefs is that, and it's because they're so good, but like they could be doing horribly, and then boom, they're right back in the game because no one can guard Kelsey or Tyreek Hill. It's literally, as long as Mahomes doesn't screw up, you know what I mean? It was like against Buffalo. He threw whatever pass at Tyreek Hill, and he runs by everybody, and boom, he's gone.
I want to see them without Tyreek Hill.
Yeah. Because then you could double Kelsey every play.
Mahomes is a phenomenal talent, but I want to see what happens when you get rid of perennial, Pro Bowl kind of talent around him.
Sure. Yeah, if you could double, the only guy left is what, Hardman. I forget the other two receivers. Are they good enough to be in single coverage?
When they played Tampa Bay and his line crapped the bed, he was running all over the place. And granted, that's different. He doesn't even have time to throw the ball there. But,
right. They need a better line. Their defense stepped up surprisingly. It used to be like their worst asset.
Well, especially the way the year started too.
Yeah, they were 2-3, I think, to start the year.
Yeah, and everyone acted like they were broken.
I thought they were. I was hoping they were because I wanted to see the Bills or somebody else do it.
What did you think of the halftime show?
I liked it, but I don't like as much modern music. So it was cool. Like the rap music I do like is the old rap. So it's cool seeing all of, like 50 Cent,
right?
Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Eminem. I like. I don't know Mary J. Blige a lot, but I thought she did fine.
No,
I don't know her enough to say she was bad.
I don't know any Mary J. Blige songs.
I know that one, the "Let's Get It Started." That's the only one I know.
Is that her?
Isn't it?
I don't know.
I thought she was singing that song.
Maybe.
I hope so.
I kind of zoned her out. No offense to Mary J. Blige.
I don't know Kendrick Lamar. I know of him, but I don't know his songs.
I didn't like Kendrick Lamar's song choice. I'm not a huge fan of his, but I didn't like his song choice. But Eminem, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, I thought they were all good. I felt it was a little clunky, just like they were like, oh crap, we have to get all of them in. Like,
yeah, they all did a solo instead of like together. But it was cool that way too because they each got to do their big song, so I liked it.
I really liked Still Dre, the way that he just started calmly playing it on the piano. Like the second he sat down, I said he's going to play Still Dre, and he just started diddling around on the piano and eventually played it. And
I think he was the best part of the halftime show too.
I'd agree with that.
I like Dre.
And like the crowd, I don't know how much of that was piped in, but the crowd kind of cheers while he's playing it on the piano. And then the production, like actual speakers start playing like the backtrack to it, and they all start going crazy.
Yeah.
And I thought it was good. I thought that was, I don't want to say emotional because like it didn't make me emotional, but it was like a cool, like, damn, this is cool
He's
kind
still,
of moment. I don't know what other way to say it.
Well, and you don't hear a lot from Dre as much anymore. At least I haven't. Plus, he's always a huge producer, so his songs you didn't hear as much either.
But like, that was just so cool to me. Just hearing, like, just performing that at the Super Bowl, which you're gonna be like, no crap, performing it at the Super Bowl is a big deal. But you think about just that kind of career that he had, and he made Eminem and some other people and worked with all these artists and stuff, and to be collectively performing with them at the Super Bowl. That's your marquee song. It's about you staying true to who you are, and despite what anyone says, you've always stuck to your guns and been genuine. Just performing that at the Super Bowl with all these people that can probably attest to that, with an iconic riff like that song has. I mean,
no, I agree.
And again, like, I'm not his target audience, obviously, but I appreciate those kind of rap songs, R&B songs that implement other kind of genres in and more instrumentals than just hitting. And again,
that's why I like old rap better. It
takes skill to make production and just, find random sounds. But when you have like the real raw instruments, like that piano intro and stuff, I think it's more impactful. It hits you more. And so and that's one of my favorite songs of all time. And so to hear that at the Super Bowl, I wish I could paint a more vivid picture, but hopefully people get what I'm saying.
Well, I assume most people watched it too.
It was just really cool.
Yeah.
And I wish, again, there was a better way to say it, but it was really cool.
No, I know what you're saying, especially because you haven't heard from Snoop's been in the limelight a lot. Eminem still makes music. I don't know about Mary J. Blige, but either way, you don't see them perform a whole lot. I know Snoop's done some commentary and like boxing and whatnot. Eminem, I don't follow too much. I like his older music better, but cool that he performed his older music too. You know what I mean? It seemed like all the songs they chose appealed to the people who would have been happy to see them perform. You know what I mean? I really liked 50 Cent just hanging upside down. That was just a callback to the actual music video. Yep.
I thought that was cool. Eminem playing Lose Yourself with, Anderson .Paak on the drums. And
who is Anderson .Paak? Do you know?
He's a singer.
Oh, okay.
I think he's a big producer.
I saw his name on the drums.
I'm not familiar with him, but yeah, he's pretty. He's done some stuff with Bruno Mars and a lot of other people.
I saw his name, and then I'm like, that guy's drumming like pretty well, and they keep showing his face. Like, he's probably somebody.
Yeah, he's somebody.
Okay.
I've always seen people playing Lose Yourself on guitar on TikTok, social media, but to see him actually rapping over that song presented that way, like with a more band rather than just the backtrack and him rapping over the beat, I thought that was really cool. And I'm not a huge Eminem fan anymore, but I was when I was growing up, believe it or not. And I thought that was a really cool way to perform that song.
I agree.
And then when they all kind of just came together for California Love opened it. Still Dre at the end. I liked that. I thought that was cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was going to add at the end there. Cool that, because you mentioned, Dre not made Snoop and Eminem, but, really helped them, rise up. Cool that it seemed like he was the highlight of the show type thing, and they were all kind of paying their respects back to him for what he did for music. That's what I liked about it, too, because he's kind of almost like the grandfather of that.
Right. My favorite part, and still Dre, Snoop says some stuff to Dr. Dre as the beginnings playing, still ride runners run deep, whatever it is.
Sure.
And there's a part in the real song where I don't know it verbatim, but he's like, we're still doing this thing or something.
Yeah.
But at the Super Bowl, Snoop Dogg, in this really corny voice, just looks at Dre when he's ad-libbing while Dr. Dre's waiting to actually start rapping. Okay. And Snoop Dogg just goes, I see you're still doing it. It's just,
I didn't notice.
It's just so funny to me. I'll play it in the actual episode. Hopefully I remember, or we don't get a copyright strike. But he's literally just like, I see you're still doing it.
Oh, that's awesome.
You still doing that, Andre? I see you still doing it.
It sounds so corny, but it was funny as hell. My question for you: who would you like to see do it next within reason?
I was trying to think of that the other day. I wish there was a big act they could get to do it. But it's who's big enough that everybody likes enough? You know what I mean? I think Billy Joel. He might be too old for it. He's got so many songs that you could definitely appeal to everybody. But is he big enough in the sense that do you think enough people would care?
I thought Billy Joel too, which I'm glad. I thought you would say it, and I thought of this earlier today.
Or maybe
obviously.
Bruce Springsteen. Somebody, because what I was going to get into, I would rather a big band do it. Or maybe the future is these like groups and like solo performances together. Because it's like, who's the big arena rock bands left?
Yeah.
One of our friends said Queen, and you could get like a
They
David
have
Bowie.
Adam Lambert.
Right. You could do that. But it's like, other than them, it's not like you're going to get Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
AC/DC's too old.
The thing is, I was struggling to think of, what demographics are they going after at this point?
Well, that's true. They've
Because
definitely leaned towards pop and rap.
If you think back to when we were elementary, early middle school, that's when they had like the Prince, Tom Petty run. I think maybe the Stones were sort of there. I can't remember the Rolling Stones show to save my life. But
no, but they were there at some point.
They were there. And those were on... And I never understood Tom Petty till recently in terms of why he was there. I mean, that's America's game.
Yeah.
The biggest sporting event in America, and that's kind of like the all-American guy.
Yeah.
Tom Petty, that Americana kind of sound in his music. So that made sense. I didn't get it at the time because I was like 9, but I get it now. I'm trying to think of who kind of has that vibe and what direction are they actually going in, because recently they've had Maroon 5, Beyonce, Coldplay, more recent, like proven, established.
Sure.
What are the big names for this generation?
Yeah, I guess Coldplay would be, because they're a rock band. You know what I mean? Like, I could see why they did that. Is it ever going to be in Tennessee soon? Because you could do country music for Nashville.
Sure. I know a lot of people have called on
country music.
Art. And I mean, there's enough left to where...
Well,
you could get like a country all-star group up there. You could get like Garth and
I was gonna say
George
Garth
Strait and like Alan Jackson, and then
Garth
maybe
Brooks sells out Notre Dame like routinely. That's his thing, is the arena shows.
You kind of do what they did with this one. You get 3 or 4 big country icons, and then bring up an up-and-coming guy, a Luke Combs, Morgan Wallen,
right?
One of those kind of performers.
Jimmy Buffett.
I don't think they do Morgan Wallen because of the fact that he notably said a slur.
Right.
But I mean,
I see what you're getting at, though. Luke Combs would be a good one.
Yeah.
I like Luke Combs.
He's commercial enough too, where like hardcore country fans might be like, get him out of there with those legends. But
who's the guy that sings the version of Tennessee Whiskey?
Chris Stapleton.
Stapleton. He's good. I think
he's good too.
From what I've heard.
But I really don't know, because
I feel like this ensemble cast thing is going to be something moving forward, because solo acts just aren't big enough.
Because they kind of had
like Michael Jackson and Prince. There's just none of that.
Well, my thought was kind of, look at these last 2 years. You had The Weeknd last year, and granted, he probably couldn't have guests because of COVID and whatnot.
Right.
It's tough to find someone bigger than The Weeknd. That show, because there was no surprise or anything, felt really lackluster to me. I love The Weeknd. He was my number one artist on Spotify.
I like his songs, but I agree, it didn't feel great.
It felt like it was missing something, and sure, there wasn't a full crowd. Sure, it was weird, and he was doing that whole thing in his music videos where he like got the facial reconstruction, and they had all the bandages on their faces and stuff.
Oh, right. I do remember that now.
Weird.
In the maze, he was going through the camera. Yeah.
And it fell flat to me. I thought it was mediocre. I didn't go like, wow, that sucked. But you're not going to find many people bigger than The Weeknd, and I felt like just him alone was lackluster. Maybe you blame it on COVID.
Sure, but I do think you need at least 2, probably. I mean, you figure...
I mean, Coldplay would have sucked, I think, if you didn't bring out Beyonce, Bruno Mars, and them.
Yeah.
You know?
What was it? It was Shakira and J-Lo?
Yeah.
Was there anyone... Pitbull, maybe? Was there somebody with them?
I think they brought Pitbull out, yeah.
Okay.
But, I mean, then you go to this year, and you get people that are probably in like their 40s, early 50s, grew up with Dre and them.
Right.
You got Eminem, who's probably been our age group, even maybe a little younger, a little older. And so there's a good mix there. But I feel like the halftime shows to get a big rating pop from people that might otherwise not be watching a football game.
That's exactly,
maybe get them to stick around.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking who could do that, my first thought goes Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
I mean...
Yeah, and she could probably do one on her own. She could do her country music, then she could do her pop music.
She's done enough collaborations. Like, I
could
feel
bring
like she
someone
could
in.
bring people out with her. And if you look, she's not super country anymore, so like her country era fans are probably going to be watching already.
Right.
But I mean, if you're trying to grow your audience in terms of women, of young adults, maybe.
Right.
Like I know a ton of guys who are Swifties. Whatever. I'm not trying to say only women would watch.
No, I see
or
what you're
just
saying though.
She makes music for women, whatever. I think she's very diverse in terms of people she actually gets to listen to her music. That's why she's so big. I feel like you could draw a lot of people in, maybe get them to stick around if Taylor Swift does it. My other thought would be, oh my God, Post Malone.
Oh yeah, he's
Post
big.
Malone's collaborated with Travis Scott. He's collaborated with Ozzy Osbourne.
Yeah, you
The
could.
question with him though, he's like a year or two older than us, I think. He's like 24, 25.
Oh really?
He's had 3 albums that were all pretty big. Do you wait until he's more established? Like even Taylor
Sure.
Swift's in her 30s. She's been making music since she was like 16 or whatever
Yeah,
she was.
that's a good point.
Do you take a gamble on someone who's had 3-ish good albums and is right now big in the moment, and maybe they fade out in 15 years? Like that was a really weird halftime show. And
That's-
not like I know every halftime show,
Right.
but
yeah,
if
you don't want to get too young.
you don't want to flash in the pan like they were famous for 5 years.
Right.
When you look back and go, Prince, Michael Jackson, Tom Petty,
Right, you're
Bruno
not gonna-
Mars, the Chili Peppers, Beyonce, and the Plain White Tees. Or you don't want some band that
Yeah.
or artist that you're just like, what?
I agree
You want
with
someone
that.
that is going to be generational or last long enough to where you don't look back and go, what the hell?
I like that idea. Not getting too young with it. I like it because I listen to old music too, so obviously I'm going to lean that way. I think as you've been talking, I've been thinking too about the country. I mean, Brad Paisley, Tim McGraw, Kenny Chesney, and then you could have Willie Nelson come out as like the old guy who just does ones. Oh, Toby Keith. I know Toby Keith
That
would never
needs to
make
be-
it there, but I love Toby Keith.
I don't know where the next Super Bowl is, unfortunately, but I feel like you need to have that in the South, or else you get a bunch of just
That's
deadpan
why I
stares
said-
from the audience.
That's why I said Tennessee, because I think you could really get away with the country. You could make the whole Super Bowl themed country when you
Yeah.
build it up from. And yeah, the nice thing about country music too is like you wouldn't even have to have Alan Jackson there, and they could all sing an Alan Jackson song, and it'd be great. You know what I mean? Like
Well,
that's
Prince,
what's nice
I think,
about
did
country.
covers during his. I think
I would believe it.
I don't know if it's Prince or Tom Petty did covers, but I know one of them did like "Learn to Fly" by the Foo Fighters.
Oh, okay.
And I think
That's
there was
what's
a
cool,
Hendrix
too.
cover, maybe. I think it was Prince who did that. But like, you can pay tribute to other artists too while you're up there.
That's
And
the
just
way I would lean.
Make it like a culmination of maybe
Right.
your inspirations and then your own music.
Oh, if they did like a Highwayman tribute with Willie Nelson.
You'll never get anything better than Prince doing "Purple Rain" in the rain.
in the rain. No,
Like,
I agree
didn't
with
know
that.
a single note of a Prince song. I'm still not a huge Prince fan, but seeing that,
I like him.
even that young, I'm like, this dude's got these 2 women in huge high heels dancing next to him in the rain on this slippery platform.
Yeah,
He's shredded on the
not
guitar.
missing a beat. Yep.
And it's like perfectly like nothing. There's no elements distracting them. Like they're just killing it. And
Yeah.
that I dare you to find a cooler moment than that, other than maybe Michael Jackson just standing there taking it in, and the crowd's just going crazy up until he finally starts. Like they
Yeah.
did not die down. Those are 2 insanely tough to beat Super Bowl halftime moments.
Yeah, it's crazy too to think that like one person, like there was no Michael and somebody else. Oh, you tried to.
It's pill time.
You're
Go
good.
ahead.
It's crazy to think that like. Oh, it's gonna slip. Sorry. Crazy to think that
There we go.
those people like just one. Like it was just Michael. It was just Prince. That's all you needed. And now it's like, I mean, maybe there are people who could do it on their own. Obviously, The Weeknd, it wasn't like he was scrambling. Because I remember watching that and thinking like, gosh, he has a ton of songs. Like, because I don't listen to like as much new music. And I was like, I know every single song he's sung.
Right.
Type thing. So like, there are people big enough to do it alone, but I don't think they're big enough in the sense of like, everyone's gonna like them. Like Prince, Michael Jackson does it by himself, and everyone loves it. You know what I mean? That people are too divided, I would think. Where like I doubt there are a lot of people who are like, gosh, that Michael Jackson halftime show sucked.
Right.
Probably not many people who said
I
that.
doubt people have said that.
Right. Compared to The Weeknd, he did it by himself. All his songs were good. It's just it didn't really hit the same.
He was just guilty of the situation, I think.
Well, that too.
Speaking of being guilty, you see that? See that transition? We're now going to review.
Oh, I thought you were talking about something that
We got
scared me.
Kyle, folks.
Wow.
We got amateur hour over here.
There's a massive window behind me, and I'm terrified. Something's coming through.
Yeah, there's just giant windows into the rooms in my apartment.
You said
Not by design. I moved in with someone else. That was not like
Sure.
I had it customly spec'd that way so I could see in on anybody. Okay, so me and Kyle forgot to say this, so we're recording this after the episode. Spoiler warning on the movie review. We recommend you go watch it. I know like 30 people listen to this. It's a big ask for us to go watch this and then come back and listen to us.
Sure.
We understand. We do give our verdict, so if you haven't watched it, you don't care about spoilers, you've decided you're going to watch it anyway, we give a verdict on if it's worth watching or not. At the end of the review, we'll even time code that out for you so you know exactly where it is.
Oh, that's a good idea,
Get our
yeah.
reasons why.
That way, if they don't want anything ruined, they can just...
There might be some spoilers in there, but actually probably not, thinking back to it.
No, it was only a couple minutes ago.
Yeah, the verdict part of it really doesn't have any spoilers.
Right.
So you're pretty safe going there. But yeah, watch it before you watch this.
Yeah.
Unless you've decided you're going to watch it anyway, because there are spoilers. So there you go. We're professionals. Enjoy. But yeah, The Guilty on Netflix, a Netflix original. Here's my research. Starring Jake Gyllenhaal, Riley Q, and Peter Sarsgaard.
Really? I didn't know it was Peter Sarsgaard.
Coincidentally, Jake Gyllenhaal's sister is married to Peter Sarsgaard, I found out
Maggie.
via Wikipedia. There you go.
She's, like in The Dark Knight, she plays... Oh, you know who Maggie Gyllenhaal is? The actress? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say what
I
she's in,
couldn't
but
think
you're
of
good.
her name, though, so I'm glad you brought it up.
Maggie,
because I
yeah,
didn't
yeah.
write it in my notes, and I knew I wasn't going to remember it, so I'm glad someone here is competent.
Yeah, she plays...
Kyle says, yeah, you're stupid. You should be thankful that I'm here.
I'm the movie guy.
Stay in your lane.
Sports is over.
Sports segment's over, Nick. It's my time to shine. Directed by Antoine Fuqua. Fuqua? Not sure. IMDb gives... Actually, we'll start with... It's a remake of a 2018 Danish film
I didn't know that.
by the same name, but in Danish, as you might guess.
Da, yeah.
Da Guilty. That might not go over well. IMDb gives it a 6.3 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes, 74% critic, 47% audience. So a little bit of a divide there.
You know, I'd have to read the reviews after seeing it because I feel like I have an idea of what they didn't like about it. But I would say a 6 point whatever is good. It's middle of the road. Before getting into it, I would say it was a perfect movie for the style. It's a Netflix original. It's an hour and a half. It doesn't have a huge cast. It doesn't need a huge cast, and it doesn't need a huge. It's a nice 90-minute story, and that's all it's got to be.
Right. And
Go ahead.
So I'll let you take the lead,
Oh, cool.
walk us through it. I'll chime in.
Sure.
What I did for mine, we probably should have mentioned this before we started recording, but we're a little out of practice.
Well, sure.
I wrote, in general, what I liked, what I didn't like, and then my verdict for after the summary's over.
Gotcha.
So
I kind of just do my notes as I watch, so I'll kind of go
there's
through.
things I noticed that I wrote specifically in the review too portion, but in general, I kind of have those general thoughts written out at the end.
Oh yeah, that sounds good.
But no, why don't you walk us through the movie and we can find out who's guilty.
Sure. Very nice. So
That's 2 puns already on the word guilty.
all right, so it's Jake Gyllenhaal's a star, and really he's the only big star that you see on the
He
screen.
is the movie.
Right. So he is a cop, and he's basically in the 911 unit answering calls. And they're in this big room. It's funny, I never put any thought into what goes on in a 911 room
Right.
type thing, so it was cool to see. And it's basically like, here's the one person overseeing it, and then cubicles of them all getting calls, and he's in the center one.
It looks like a streamer's dream setup. There's 6 monitors.
Right, they got
all these random devices that they can hit. They have little keyboards that this call transfer buttons and random stuff off to the side.
I liked that where he could just hit boom LAPD, boom, fire department. In the background of all this, which is a key plot point, is the fires in California. I don't know how true to real life that is. I just know they're in LA area.
Yeah, I mean, they get wildfires a lot. It's not super far-fetched, I thought, to be
And I know they've had them recently, so I don't know if that's kind of why
I think they've had them literally within the last month or so. Wildfires.
So it makes sense. It kind of fits our current time.
I kind of liked that because sometimes they'll make up these random
reasons why the cops can't get there.
Why something happened in these kind of movies, but this one actually felt real.
And you can see in the monitors in the background the live news feed of. So that was a cool. I I don't know, cool antagonist of the movie, even though it's not a person. It's still something that gets in his way. It's basically alluded to that he is a on-duty police officer who's here. They don't really say why he got reassigned to this division, but basically he's got a court hearing. This is what Saturday night we'll say. He's got one Sunday morning, or it's Sunday and he's got it Monday morning. And so you kind of allude to, well, geez, what'd he do? Why does this cop have to go to court? And they,
LA Times writer calls him about his side of the story very early on, and we have no clue what the hell's happening other than he gets really pissed off with her, and then he gets yelled at for being on his phone.
Right. And so that kind of gives the assumption like, oh, maybe he did something wrong. Like for him not to want to talk about it, maybe it's like a scandal type thing. So this is where he's been assigned to work for the evening. And basically he starts taking calls, and you can tell by his character he doesn't really treat the people that call him with the most sympathy. I have written here a big rip to Drew and his speed addiction. Like there's a guy in there that calls him, and he basically just like shuns this guy. And it's like, I get it, you can get cynical, but like people calling 911, you shouldn't just hang up on or like not care. Because there's another guy who like his bike. Remember he says like, I hurt my ankle, I fell off my bike. Like this is in the heat of the movie when he's waiting for someone else to call him, and he's like, don't get drunk and ride your bike, and hangs up on him. Like, oh my gosh.
They call him back. He's like, you get the same person. I told you to call back later. And he like slams the phone.
It says call back later. This guy's ankle's just shot.
The guy shattered his ankle on his bike, and Jake Gyllenhaal's telling him to shut up.
Yeah, I was like, oh, it's awful. And it's weird too, because, and now I'll get into the plot, but you can kind of get this sense of, and it's like when any of us answer the phone, when the phone rings 5 times in a row, by the 5th time you're like, what type thing? And it's like, gosh, I couldn't imagine, like, you can't answer that phone and be pissed. You have to actually take their call and act concerned.
Civil, professional.
Yeah, it's like, gosh, that would be a brutal job, especially if everyone's, busy and you got to answer all the lines. And I said here that a cool intro with the 911 operator. You don't get to see that angle a lot in the media. And it's understandable why he's upset. But at the same time, like, you got to be sympathetic with it. And it's probably more to build his character. It's a good way to show that he's sympathetic, but at the same time, he's kind of like a hard ass type thing. So the reporter calls him. He hangs up, says he doesn't want to talk to her. He calls his wife before he gets into the one main call, which is the whole point of the movie. It's him going back and forth with one. There's
a scene where he clicks his lock screen, and it's a little girl.
Right.
And I thought his daughter died, and that was the main tell your side of the story. And kudos to the movie, because then...
That's funny. I never thought of it that way, but that's a good point.
There's a little girl as his lock screen, like, something happened to his daughter. Maybe he snapped, and like hurt the person that did it or something.
Right.
But no, he calls his, what we learned to be separated from wife, and asks if he can talk to her, and she doesn't answer, and so he says, call me back. But that was really cool that they probably knew that your brain would say, ooh, maybe this has something to do with that LA Times article the lady wants to work on.
Yeah, good, like a subtle hint almost, and his phone lights up.
But then it's not it.
Right. And so he gets a call from, I believe, Christy?
Do I have it down?
Sorry, I didn't write their names down.
The lady, like the main lady?
Yeah,
Emily.
Yeah. Emily, thank you. Emily. I just have written Jake, like Jake Gyllenhaal. His name's Joe in the movie. So Jake Gyllenhaal, Joe, gets a call from Emily, and she says she's been kidnapped by her husband, her boyfriend. And really, it's kind of the usual, he says, where are you at? What kind of car is he driving? There's a cool dynamic of where the husband thinks that she's on the phone with her daughter, who's back at home with her little brother. They just left them there type thing. And so Joe, he tells her, act like I'm your daughter. And so she kind of answers, yes, sweetie, no.
They kind of do. I'm sure you've heard it online, the ordering a pizza 911 trick. And they ask you yes or no questions.
Right.
This is that, but a little bit on steroids, I'd say.
Right. And it's a cool way of, him, I guess, building that, building the connection with her and trying to figure out where she's at. And so the next good portion of the movie is him bouncing between her.
The whole movie.
Well, yeah, really. Him bouncing between talking with her and then also talking with Highway Patrol. And it's the problem with the bushfires that we said where, you know, when she calls, he sees on the screen, okay, boom, she's somewhere in this area, get a patrol car, look for a white van. And they've only got, you know, like one patrol car that they can really afford to take away from the fires. And they can't just go willy-nilly type thing. You know, they just have to use this one car, try their best to follow the source. And they eventually find a white van. And you might have like more in detail on this. I thought it was really cool. So early on, they say, okay, we found this white van. We're going to pull him over. He's on the line with the LAPD officer. And you don't see them pull over the person. You kind of see this like haze between Jake Gyllenhaal and them like flashing lights, pulling this person over. And all you get is like the audio of them, you know, get out of the car, put your hands up. Is there anyone in the back? Do you have a wet? And it's cool because it builds this tension of like you're watching Jake Gyllenhaal, so you're just locked in, hearing what's happening. You don't get to see anything, which is cool. I thought that was a cool dynamic. Not a lot of movies that I've seen recently have that. You always, boom, you see what happens. And I don't think it wouldn't have been as good at holding the tension if you saw them pull over some Joe Schmo. You know, because you know it's not going to be him. It's 20 minutes in the movie. You know it's not the guy.
Right.
But it's still a good way of like not being, nope, it wasn't him, sorry. And then you're stuck.
No, I agree. I thought that was a really cool portion. I thought us kind of learning at the same time he was learning rather than us just seeing it.
Right.
I thought that was a really cool dynamic.
Yeah. Oh, and I have written on here, the highway patrol cop is kind of bitchy for the guy who knows there's a kidnapping. I don't know if you remember, he's like, Jake Gyllenhaal is telling him about it, and he's like, all right, well, pull up next to him, pull over. And the guy's like, don't tell me what to do. And I'm like, what? You know that there's a kidnapped person in this car. If it's the car, like, there's no, don't get lippy with Jake Gyllenhaal because he's, I mean, and that's the other thing that's like really difficult. And like, I got frustrated because you only see Jake Gyllenhaal. You're like, gosh, why aren't they doing this? Why aren't, you know, like, I don't know. I got into it more emotionally than I thought I was going to.
I did too. A lot of people in this movie were frankly just really rude.
Yeah, none of the characters were really like, you didn't sympathize with, even Jake Gyllenhaal, you don't really sympathize with him. It's more like, I'm just as angry as this guy is. He has no idea. He can't see anything.
I think there's a really good, the way it's done though is good in the sense that you can tell everyone's just kind of on edge because of the wildfires and everyone's kind of stripped down from just in terms of available units because of everyone helping with fires and stuff.
Right, and the one like highway patrol lady who patches him through or says, okay, I'll try and find a car for you. She's like, I'm up to my ass in phone calls type thing. And like, so she's in the same situation he's in. And it's just this tough, like, it's a weird dynamic to see that like you calling 911 and a cop car getting to you isn't always how it goes. There's there's a lot of roadblocks in the way. And so the other thing I have before we get back into Emily, which is again the whole movie, the guy sitting next to him, he says something to him. He's like, "What's this all about?" Or like, "What's going on?" He's like, "Mind your effing business," type thing.
Yeah, he like flips out at him.
It's like because he said something to him, and then he's like, "Oh, really? What was it about?" And then he says, "Mind your effing business." Yeah. I'm like, "Wait a minute, you were just talking to this guy." So there's a couple of scenes where it's like that didn't really fit for him to be that mean to him.
What a night! And then he's like, "What's going on?" He's like, what the hell do you mean what's going on? Like flips out at him.
It's like, wait, you're the one who brought it up.
He literally tries to like goad this guy into hearing about what he's dealing with, and then the guy takes an interest and asks him, and he loses his shit on him. And I'm like, why'd you call attention to it? That's the whole,
the other thing too, Bill Burr was the, I believe he was the cop.
Was that Bill Burr? Okay, yeah. I thought it was Bill Burr, and then I forgot to look after the movie, but when it happened, I was like, that really sounds like Bill Burr.
I heard the voice, and I was like, oh, that's cool, they had Bill Burr in there. He's a good voice actor. He's got a good voice just because it's so, not iconic, but you know it's him.
It's like a raspy, kind of recognizable.
Yeah, you know when
really
it's him
good at playing
talking.
Someone who's annoyed voice.
Yeah, you're very good at being annoyed. So he then, at some point, and this is a little out of order probably with what I've said so far, but he talks to Abby, who is Emily and her husband. I forget her husband's name. Henry. Abby and Henry. Abby is Emily and Henry's daughter. Her brother is Oliver. He's like a newborn, we'll say, a baby. Yeah. He's not talking on the phone. Abby, I think, is 6. And there's kind of this long portion between her and Jake Gyllenhaal where he's trying to get her to give him information And I don't mean that like get her to give up information, but the fact that she's 6 and like she just doesn't know what's happening.
Well, the police also say we can't do anything until we know more of what we're looking for.
Right.
And so he does these, he gets her trust basically, and she gives the phone number for her dad.
Her fault, right.
So then he can look up the phone number and get the license plate.
Right.
So it's a really important scene, and I thought it was pretty well done. I thought they made her sound innocent in the sense of like, well, my mom said I shouldn't be doing this with strangers, and she's kind of hesitant, but Jake Gyllenhaal, aside from just being very angry and aggressive like he has been for 90% of the movie at this point, he actually kind of calms down and channels it and just instead directs his focus and his attention, I guess, towards calming down and getting this information out of this girl, because he knows this situation's not good and it's going to end badly and soon if he can't get someone on it.
Right. And the one thing I'll add too is to anybody who's like thinking about watching it, regardless of what you think of our review of it, I would say on the surface, when you only hear people's voices, everyone sounded kind of bitchy in this movie. And maybe that was just me, but it was all these people just sound awful. And it's like when you can't see facial, it's like when people talk, you know how they say like 90% of the way we talk is this, hand gestures and the vocalization. When you don't get any of that, everyone sounds annoying.
Or facial reactions.
Exactly. And so I think that's another interesting dynamic that like it made me frustrated, but I think that's how they want you to feel, because that's how Jake Gyllenhaal feels. You can't see anybody, you're just hearing people, especially, a woman who's kidnapped and has no idea what's going on, and a 6-year-old girl. Like, those are hard people to talk on the phone with, let alone get information out of. So, she gives the cell phone number. He calls Henry. And I don't really have written down exactly what Henry says, but basically, until toward the end of the movie, you don't get much from Henry. He
doesn't open up right away in terms of everything that happened.
Exactly. He doesn't say a lot, and it's kind of one of those, like, obviously he's not going to say where they're at.
Right.
Jake Gyllenhaal's trying to get out of him. He's just getting more and more pissed because this guy's just annoying at that point.
Yeah.
And then he's not talking to Emily anymore. Again, difficult.
When he does talk to Abby, though, the daughter, we kind of get the sense that Henry's really aggressive and broke a bunch of stuff and has a short fuse, and their marriage is over, basically, which is important.
I don't know if Abby says he has a knife. At some point, we find out he's got a knife, and I thought she gave it up, but I don't remember. That could be wrong. But basically, officers get sent over. They finally get a car, and Jake Gyllenhaal calls his boss. Basically, he calls LAPD. His boss is not the chief, Sarge. His sergeant, he says, we got to run phones once every other month or whatever, just kind of like circling the units or whatever, and. So it's funny because there's like this dynamic between him and his Sarge where like they're buddies, and then he's like, all right, I need you to send a car to the house for the daughter and send one to Henry's place to start investigating. And then the Sarge's like, I'm not going to do that.
Oh yeah, he gets like really angry out of nowhere.
And it's this dynamic that I don't care for. It happens a lot in police and military movies where they're friends and they're buddies until it hits a point, and then it becomes, I'm your superior, and this is how it's going to go. And it's like, I get it, but it's like, could you imagine in real life, like if we were buddy right now, and then you started getting on my nerves and I had to remind you that I'm better than you, and it's like, that just ruined the dynamic and I get that's how it is, but it's still like, it's annoying to hear. I don't know. That's just a personal thing with me. It's just a pet peeve, I guess.
Before he calls this sergeant for the second time and starts giving him direct orders, and then sergeant,
snaps
macho
back.
Powers him.
Right.
There's a really funny scene where the guy that he just talked to and flipped out at, whose name is Manny, Joe's like, I'm a bit of an asshole sometimes. Like, let's get a beer. And Manny's like, I'd like that, Joe. And then he goes, can I log into any computer here? And he's like, yeah. And so he just gets up and walks out.
He goes and
Manny's
logs
like,
in.
what about the beer? And that's all. That's it. This poor Manny guy is so willing to look past what an aggressive jerk Joe is, and he just doesn't to have it.
I like that too, especially because he's like, we should get a beer sometime, and then Manny took that as tonight after work we're getting a beer. Like he was already so excited.
That too. Like Jake Gyllenhaal's character never says when the beer should be had.
And that's like a common thing. People say, oh, we should get a beer sometime, and he was like, what about our beer?
Manny assumes tonight because Jake Gyllenhaal gets up and goes into this room by himself with another setup.
Manny doesn't get out much.
He's like, what about a beer? And like he's flipping out, and it's just I feel bad for Manny.
Yeah, that was rough. So, and I don't know if you have things written in the order. I more have my reaction to them. But at this point in the story, a couple things happen. One, his boss says, I'm only going to send send officers to the house with the kids. Not going to send any to Henry's place. Jake Gyllenhaal calls his partner, who is going to be a key witness in this court case tomorrow. That kind of gets brought up, and he realizes he's been drinking.
Yeah.
And because I have that written down.
His name's Rick.
Yeah.
He's kind of like, you can't be drunk on the stand tomorrow, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
He's like, don't worry about it. We'll be back on the street tomorrow, whatever.
Right. And he's said he hasn't had too many drinks. He's good enough to drive type thing. So he's going to go to Henry's place. And there was the one thing, like, I get that you would need to go to Henry's place to maybe see where they're going, but like in a super time sensitive situation like this, is that really it's a weird dynamic because like Rick isn't on duty right now. So like, it's not like you're expending resources to go do this, but at the same time, like, are you really going to find where they're going? I get it and I don't get it.
I thought it was kind of far-fetched to be like, go in their house and find an address they could be going to.
And it was like, you're really going to break all... Because, like, that's stuff that, like, could get Henry off scot-free. Like, you can't just break into someone's home for evidence that you need a warrant.
1980 to me, like, you would go home and you'd find an address book, like, before you had cell phones. And you had a little booklet. Like, our moms probably even had them.
Oh, yeah, my mom still uses
You
one.
had, like, a little booklet, everyone's phone number and their address, because they're just not things you could punch into your phone and be like, okay, we're going to Sally's.
Well, and it's like, unless you're going to find a note that says, you know, headed to so-and-so, we'll be back in 2 days. There's,
Kidnap the wife.
Yeah, right. You're not going to find much. So either way, that's going on one phone call. That's almost how the movie gets divided, is people he's on the phone with waiting to hear back from. So then the officers go to the residence. I guess it's Emily's house they go to, and they find Abby there, and Abby says that Oliver's asleep. She says that Henry said, don't go in there, he's sleeping. You know what I mean? Don't mess with him. Because earlier in the movie, Jake Gyllenhaal says, why don't you watch TV? That'll calm you down. She says it's broke. He says, go sit with your brother. And that's when she says, oh, he's sleeping. Dad told me not to go in there to wake him. And he was like, well, you could just go in there and be quiet. But and so at first it seemed okay, but then... And I kind of saw this coming once the officers are there and they're in the apartment. They say, all right, we got the girl right here. And they go, wait, hang on a second. There's blood all over her. And then it kind of hits, like, the baby's sleeping. Don't go in there. And it's not her blood. And then that's when you hear the officer, like, oh, my God, there's blood everywhere. Go get an ambulance. And then, like, the officer obviously, like, tunes Jake Gyllenhaal out, hangs up on him because obviously a dying or dead baby is a much bigger issue. And that really amplifies the story for Jake Gyllenhaal's anger and the like need to figure out what's going on, because now it's not just kidnapping, it's murder. Know, everything gets escalated, obviously.
Yeah, I was really surprised by that scene almost. I didn't expect Oliver to be dead. I don't know why. Well, or dying. But no, that was really emotional for some reason.
Yeah, I agree. And plus the whole dynamic of Jake Gyllenhaal with his daughter, because we see his phone rings early in the movie when he's talking to Emily one of the first few times, and like he can't answer it, and like just 5 minutes ago he's begging his wife to say goodnight to his daughter, and now he's gonna let it ring, and it's like you just can't win type thing.
Just before this scene where we find out about Oliver getting attacked, his wife calls back and is like, you can't keep doing this, blah, 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 blah. And he tries to make small talk, and she just gets really annoyed with him. And
it's like 2 a.m.
That's about it.
Yeah. And so that's, it makes sense. Jake Gyllenhaal's just in a bad place mentally. This court case, the stressful nature of that job itself, answering phones. A little funny note I had in here is like, when he switches rooms, they only have like 10, 15 minutes left in their shift.
Yeah.
And I was like, how funny would it be if he just punched out?
Yeah.
He's waiting on a call back on all these people, just clocks out.
He told all these people to call 911 and ask for Joe, and he just clocks out instead.
And that's it.
Manny comes in and says, Joe, I'm leaving. And Joe's like, I'm staying.
Yep.
Manny really wanted that beer.
Yeah, he tried. He tried on multiple occasions. I have on here, he told somebody who called 911 to F off. I believe that's the guy who broke his leg on the bike or his ankle. And so then I believe when he calls back Henry and he just goes off on him and he's like, you murdered the kid. You know, you have to tell me where you are. And he's just going off on him. And I'm thinking to myself, I get how mad you are, and that's perfectly reasonable. But like, you can't just do that and expect him to be like, you know what, you're right.
No, I wrote that too. I said, if this guy has a prior history, he already, to our interpretation, killed a child, and he's got his wife in the back of a car. Why would you be berating him for who he is as a person?
Right.
Wouldn't that
Yeah, because
make
it
him,
gets like personal.
Wouldn't that make him more likely to hurt the woman?
Right. If he was like, yeah.
So I was like, ooh, I don't like that.
Yeah, and I think that probably was more like character, not development, but like because
I think showing the short fuse and maybe like his inability to process things because of how agitated he was because of all the factors going on around him.
Right. It was more to show his mental state than what like the protocol should be.
Right.
And so obviously Henry's like, whatever he replies to him, he's like, I got to go, and he hangs up type thing, which is obviously what you expect. As soon as he started yelling at him, I'm like, I've seen Criminal Minds or Law and Order. Once you start yelling at the killer, they're not just gonna fold. Yeah, that's not how the whole like personality works.
This also starts a lot of back and forth just of him calling Emily and Henry.
Yeah. He'll call. It'll go to voicemail. He'll call again. Sometimes they answer. They talk for a second.
The only notable thing that's not that at this point is that Rick gets to the apartment and is just like, there's not much here. This guy has some tickets and there's some addresses to look through, basically.
Yeah, and he's like, I'll be at this all night. And he's like, we'll get going. And
yeah.
What?
This dude's tipsy.
Barking orders. Yeah, exactly. Sorry.
It's a loud thud.
And so at this point, he calls Emily, and she's in the back of the truck. And that's probably the longest phone call they share, I would say. One of the more annoying ones, I thought, just because it's like, gosh, she is just so upset. And I get why, but it's like, oh my gosh.
Is this where he like tells her to breathe with him?
Yes.
And he has asthma as like a thing. Like he's always hitting his inhaler, and there's this really high pitched like dog whistle sound whenever he gets too overwhelmed. And
because he's like, just breathe with me, and he goes to take a deep breath to like breathe into the mic to show her,
coughing.
and he starts coughing into the mic.
And then he asks questions, and she's like, I love the aquarium. Come to the aquarium with me, Joe.
Yeah, he's like, what's something you do with your kids? And it's one of those things, this movie, where it's like, if you were to watch it a second time, you'd pick up on it. But it's like, something's off with this lady. Like, I understand you're in a state of shock, but like, and she finds a brick in the back, and he tells her, you got to hit him with the brick as soon as he opens that door type thing.
Well, she gets moved from the passenger seat to the back because she pulls the handbrake to Joe's recommendation to try and wipe them out, and it doesn't work.
Right.
So now she's in the back of the van, and Joe's like, hit him with a brick.
Yeah, and that was the best she found. It was like, all right, that makes sense. And then because she goes on and on about how she can't do that, she couldn't hit him with a brick, and then he calms her down. They talk about the aquarium, and I'm pretty sure it's on this phone call.
The snakes.
The snakes, yeah.
This is weird.
Where they get talking about Oliver. I don't really know how. She talks about why she takes the kids to the aquarium, and how her daughter likes the turtle. She doesn't even look at the sharks, and that's when Emily says she looks at everything, and she just likes being surrounded by water, and like that's when you start thinking like something's off. Like again, she's in a crazy state of mind, but like, why is she describing it the way she's describing it? It sounds like crazy. And then she gets on talking about Oliver with these snakes. These snakes in his stomach, and so she had to cut them out. And that's when it's almost like you see it on Jake Gyllenhaal's face, because again, you're only watching him this whole time, and you he's putting together at the same time.
She's not the bad guy. Or she is the bad guy. Sorry. Completely wrong. The opposite of what I said.
Right. And then it makes sense why the blood was everywhere and she killed Oliver. And at some point you find out he talks to Rick again. And there's a psychiatric ward that's like in this mail, nothing except she was there for a little bit. I don't know if that helps you. And I thought it was funny, like, I get it's all processing for Jake Gyllenhaal, but like he just stays quiet on the line, and then Rick's like, hello, and he just hangs up, and I'm like, what? Right. This guy just bent over backwards for you, and you know what I mean?
This is the guy in the way of your freedom tomorrow in this court hearing.
Exactly.
And he's just like, I got the info, and he just hangs up on him.
Yeah. And then, so at some point, she opens up, she hits Chris, and they separate, she runs off, he calls Chris, basically gets...
Henry.
Yeah, who's Chris?
There is no Chris.
Why do I keep saying Chris?
I don't know. Have you said Chris before?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, she hits Henry.
She hits Henry. And Rick's either way, hits Henry.
Close enough.
Yeah, calls Henry, gets his side of the story. And basically he says, like, she was fine before this. She's off her meds type thing. He didn't have the heart to tell her that she killed Oliver. And now he doesn't know where she's at. And so then he calls her, or no, I believe she calls him, because that's when somebody's like, there's a call for you out here. It's Emily. And he's like, patch her through. And the guy goes, what happened here? And I'm like, what? Not that you have any idea what is happening. Because he destroys
his desk at this point, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Because he's furious. This whole time he's been, he broke into the guy's house. He's telling her to kill him with this brick. He's, pulling strings left and right to figure this all out, just to find out he was wrong because he didn't have the right information and he was just being played type thing. And and then so some intern or whatever says, oh, there's a call for you. And he goes, patch her through, hurry up type thing. And he goes, what happened here? Why? Your whole department is time sensitive. What do you mean? Just have a chat about him and Maddie. Or no. What was the other guy's name? Marty?
Henry.
No, the guy who wants the beer.
Manny.
Him and Manny are just not on the same wavelength as Jake Gyllenhaal. I'm sorry, I'm terrible with names. That's why I just say the actor.
I'm sure everyone's following right along.
They're like, click. They clicked off.
But yeah, so basically Henry just says Emily hit him. She's the one who killed the son. She's hysterical. Blah, 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 blah. Emily calls him, says she's going to find her kids and take them to the aquarium.
AKA jump off the overpass.
And she's covered in blood.
And then
starts realizing.
Yeah, because she doesn't know whose blood it is. So, it's an interesting dynamic. They paint her to be someone who's crazy that doesn't realize how crazy they are type thing, which is cool because it adds again to the frustration of like, you're almost trying to help this person because they really don't realize they're like a danger to themselves and other people. It's hard, you know what I mean? It's hard to paint that person as the villain in that sense. And
then Joe, we start learning about what this whole situation is, says that it's his fault because she's like, you told me to hit Henry with the brick, blah, 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 blah. And he goes, you're right, it's my fault. And he tries to reason with her, and he admits that he killed a kid who was 19. It's a teenager, not a child. Depending on who you talk to.
I think people would agree.
No, in that he did it because he was angry because the kid hurt someone.
Right, and that's really all we get. That's it. Just that he killed, and that's probably the point too. You know what I mean? Yeah. The bear end of it, like he killed a kid type thing. That's what he's guilty about. And guilty.
The police show up.
Episode ends.
The police show up, and Emily hangs up the phone, and the officers get her, and everyone's like, "Good work, Joe."
Oh yeah, because she says like I'm gonna leave and hangs up, and then he gets a call from the officers who say we found her, so that's good. And then the kid Oliver lives.
Yeah, we found out
that
Oliver's
written here
in
with
the
an
ICU.
exclamation point.
I said he's alive? ?
Big Oliver, he stepped up, he clutched.
And then Joe's supervisor tells him, "Broken people save broken people."
I have written that's a great line.
And I said, "That's sad." True.
It is, yeah.
Joe goes into the bathroom, which is where the movie basically started, and he just tells Rick to tell the truth tomorrow in court. And Rick's like, "Why? Like, you're not going to see your daughter for years."
Yeah, and I thought the acting was pretty good in that scene because he's crying on the phone. He's barely even talking to Rick. He finally gets his composure and says to tell the truth. And as soon as he says like, you're not going to see your daughter for years, he instantly like breaks down and starts crying again. And I was like, that's how I would imagine a father would react hearing that information.
Then we cut to drone footage of California wildfires and news anchor saying that Joe pled guilty in court.
Yeah. That's how the movie ends. One of those things like he kind of not saved the day, but a happy ending from his work scenario, but a bad ending for him. I said, my final thoughts. Good flick, really good with the tension. Again, the dynamic of only seeing him on the phone. One of those things, like if this movie was made in the 90s or whatever with like a really low budget, it'd be like, wow, for only being able to show the guy who's on the phone, it was a pretty good budget. It's solely dialogue based. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah.
Like I said, I got pretty frustrated. Like, gosh, why won't these people just say what's wrong, get to the point? Yeah, and that's not how phone calls work. It's not how 911 works. I thought that was really good. My biggest gripe and the thing I didn't care for was, did they really need the backstory, the side story with him going to court? Did that really play? Like, couldn't you have just made him a bad father? He's got issues with his wife and daughter, and that's it. You didn't really need his partner to go. His partner found that she was in the psych ward. You could have found that out a different way, and even then, you didn't. You could have had his partner help out without him being in the court. It felt like a weird, like the broken people save broken people. Like he didn't have to be a broken person.
Yeah.
Or he didn't have to murder a kid to be, what did you think?
I'll get in. The good.
You can give. I've talked plenty.
Jake Gyllenhaal's performance is really strong.
Yeah,
to make a movie like this watchable, you need a really strong lead, considering he's one of about 4 characters that says anything that we actually see.
Right, I agree.
And granted, the other ones we barely see as this cord just starts twisting around on its own. And screw it. So not many people could have pulled that off. Really strong performance on his end. Kudos to him, honestly, for keeping that remotely interesting. I thought the storyline was engaging and entertaining. Lots of different turns, and to realize things as he realized them, I thought was a really unique dynamic, unlike anything I've really seen before. And it's suspenseful right from the get-go, basically.
Yeah,
when
that's
he's
a good
taking
point.
the calls that really don't even matter. And kept you guessing, I thought.
The character development with him, I thought, was pretty good for a 90-minute movie and a guy who stays in one building the entire time.
Yeah, and the premise is cool. Like a 911 operator. When I think of a 911 operator, I think they call, they say, we'll send a cop car to your house or something. Like I never would have thought they would take. I know he's doing more than what they normally probably would have done.
Right.
But to know that they like switch between all of these different people and call these people.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
There was a movie similar plot with Halle Berry that's come out recently, and I don't know how that movie did. I don't know the plot of that movie. I don't know if that's why some people didn't like this movie. Like if you read the reviews and were like, oh, it's the same as the Halle Berry movie, then fine. Without knowing that, I can't say. One thing I will say, the twist was good. For, again, a 90-minute movie with phone calls, I thought that was a pretty solid twist. It kept it interesting. The other thing I was going to say, when you put this all together, we should throw a spoiler alert somewhere in there. I realized I went right into the twist without saying anything.
Yeah, well...
because we usually dissect the entire movie, but just in case. Good spoiler.
The bad, I thought it got really stale. I thought storyline-wise it was engaging the whole time, but after like 45 minutes of seeing him sitting at the same desk for a while, as cool as it was to learn things and try to imagine the things the way he had to imagine them, I just thought it got really bland. I thought it got really repetitive.
I agree.
As unique as it was and as much as they did make it work, I thought after a while it just became way too repetitive, it made me too anxious, and not in a good way. Like, yes, I was anxious to find out what actually happened, where the twists were going to be.
Right.
But
almost anxious, like, what's taking so long?
Yeah, I needed to see something, because you can only watch him freak out over nothing so many times before you get annoyed.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, please show me something else.
When I watched this each night before bed, so I watched it in 3 sittings, half hour each, and I was like excited for that because I texted you. I was like,
so you broke it up like as a TV special almost, like a 3-part.
Yeah, right. Because when I go to bed and I have to wake up, I was like, oh, I'll just chunk it out.
You do have to wake up when you go to bed. That is how sleep works.
Exactly. And so the last one I had was like 39 minutes. It was like the longest chunk. And I was excited. It's like, oh, we'll find out what's happening. And each time I made sure I left at a good point where it was like, ooh, cliffhanger type thing. And then I got to that last 30 minutes. It was like, gosh, especially because I went to bed at like 9 that night. So like literally my last chunk by the time I finished was done by like 10. And it wasn't even that late. And I was like, I got so excited for that last chunk, and then it just didn't. But because by that point it drags, and I think the frustration that I was talking about, were like, gosh, why is everybody so difficult on this phone? Kind of builds up to being like I said, that last phone call with Emily, when again it's to show that she's crazy, but it takes a while. The breathe with me part is a little annoying because it goes on, and
we feel what he's feeling, which I get is what they're going after. Like, we're getting annoyed, I feel like, the same way he's getting annoyed, things aren't moving. But as a viewer, I felt like it made it not enjoyable to an extent.
And I think you didn't have to have her constantly like saying she couldn't hit him, she couldn't do it, she can't do it. Without, you didn't need that to show that she was crazy. You know what I mean? That's what any hysterical person would do.
Yeah.
You know, but it went on a little long, I think.
Let me see what I want to say here, actually.
Oh, you're fine. Like I said, I think the whole side story with him and Cord just really didn't
that's
need...
what I was going to jump to, because we kind of touched on something else I said. The lack of backstory to what he actually did, I think, really hurt this movie, because it felt like they weren't committed to it. It felt like it was just a thing they threw in there to explain why he was getting so agitated. And like you said, you could have been like, he was getting a divorce and wasn't going to see his daughter as much, and so that made him care about this a lot. He got angry. Yeah. They could have found a way to get that Rick portion in there another way, because we learned nothing about what happened to him. And it's supposed to be... Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, couldn't he have been like... Because I get you probably want a reason. It's a good idea to have him be an everyday cop, everyday detective who now has to work phone duty. Couldn't you have had him like... He messed up a case. Maybe a kidnapping case, and he beat the guy senseless, or he went over the line type thing, and now this is his punishment or whatever. And then now, that makes sense why he jumps on Henry from the get-go. You know what I mean? You could have used something that didn't require this court case, the multiple phone calls from the reporter, and it was like I didn't like it, because then like at the end of the movie, he pleads guilty, and it's like, okay, just became a good person at the end of the movie, right? Because you're like, well,
the ending meant nothing.
Right. Him saving her, even though he was a bad dude, or we're told to believe he's a bad dude, was enough.
The scene where he tells Emily, I killed someone too, that should have been a really emotional, like, we get everything there is to know about what happened with him. Yeah. And it didn't do that. He was just like, I killed someone too. I killed the 19-year-old because he hurt somebody. And it's like, well, what, did the kid deserve it or what? Like,
exactly.
Did the kid kill someone and you killed him back? But it turned out it wasn't actually him. Like, what happened? We get the bare minimum, and I feel like that scene with Emily where he goes, I killed someone too, that should be super emotional. That should be like, oh my God, this is what he did. Now we know what has been bothering him, and we should feel something. But it just feels like, okay, like, when do we hear more now? And then we never hear that more. Yeah,
and also too, like, him, it was like she killed someone and she feels terrible and she's gonna kill herself, and then he says, I killed someone too, and it's like, does that really, like if I was her and I'm on the phone and I'm like, this is it, I can't do it or whatever, and then the guy on the phone says, I killed someone too, and it's like, what does that really have to do? You know what I mean? Like, I think it was enough to just stun her and stop her for a second, but then other than that, it didn't, like you said, it just, the emotional weight behind it wasn't what the emotional weight should have been. And I was just pulling up on IMDb some user reviews, basically, like, not the critic reviews, the people, just to see if there was, what's it called? The same, ideas that we're having. It's tough too on IMDb, because a lot of people, like, 10 out of 10, 8 out of 10, intense.
It is intense, and that's what makes it good. Jake Gyllenhaal's performance is good. It's intense. A lot of turns. Obviously, the big plot twist of she's the bad person and Henry's trying to help her in the complete wrong way. My verdict on the movie, I said, an interesting premise, really intense. Lots of twists and turns that keep you guessing and invested in the storyline. But the repetitiveness is not enough to make up for the lack of visuals and unnecessary scenes. And unnecessary scenes is the point that when I was blanking out. Because I'm sure if you haven't watched it, it was tough to follow what we were even saying. Because like he calls her, then calls her. Some of it just felt really unnecessary. Out of 5, I gave it a 2. Which might be harsh.
Well, no, because I mean, I'd probably give it a 6 out of 10, maybe. So,
with that too, though, I would recommend watching it solely because it's a really unique premise. Jake Gyllenhaal does give a good performance. It is intense. Like I felt that the whole time. It's just a lot of it feels unnecessary. And visually, I like visualizing things, and I get why they didn't, and that helps you feel that emotion. But it just kind of missed the mark, I thought. So I would say watch it if you have time, if it sounds like something you'd be interested in. But it fell a little flat for me. So I'd say 2 out of 5.
I think that's fair. On here, it looks like very similar maybe to that original. And so a lot of people are saying this was just another needless Hollywood remake. A lot of people agree Gyllenhaal did well. And I think that's what, I mean, you get a good actor in any movie, especially a dialogue movie. They're going to go wild with it because dialogues, you can knock dialogue out of the park type thing.
A lot of Netflix originals really fall flat to me. Like they're either way too corny or just a really dumb concept to begin with.
Yeah.
Or a shitty remake that didn't have any business being made. And granted, this is a remake too. But it's a foreign remake. Like maybe American audiences haven't been able to see it in a way they could understand. And it's passable. It's not like it's some movie you do a what the hell and turn it off, you know?
And one of the persons said, you know, if you wanted to make a movie about police brutality, you should have just made one about it. And so I'm almost wondering if it's similar to the Danish movie, and then maybe over there that subtle police brutality was a lot more effective, whereas over here it's like, why didn't you just make the whole movie that? Because over here people, you just make the movie direct. You don't need that little bit because it's obviously a bigger thing in America, or at least when the movie came out, obviously a hotbed issue then. I would say good for what it was. 90-minute thriller movie, a little twist at the end, good acting by Gyllenhaal. A side story that didn't need to be there, but a good movie night movie if you like thrillers. It's good that it didn't go to theaters. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like that isn't a movie for the
theaters.
No,
I think people would have fallen asleep.
Yeah, perfect for the avenue that it was delivered on, and
we hope you end up on Have an Opinion Avenue again. It's great to be back.
Yeah, it was. I could. Oh.
Kyle could cry right now.
I have so much more to talk about, but hey, we've got more coming.
We have more coming.
More on the menu.
Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.